Welcome in, everyone, to the CFR Draft Roundtable. We are talking about one of my favorite positions today, the cornerback position, the much maligned, much talked about cornerback position for the Bills. Now, we know that, cornerback two has been an issue for the Bills for the past couple seasons. Levi Wallace is a solid cornerback, but we all can agree that it can definitely be upgraded. So today, talk the prospects that we like that can upgrade either the slot position or the outside corner position. And before we start, I want everyone to share this on Facebook, share this on your favorite social media site. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. Please share it. Everybody come in, join in, talk with us. Give your opinion on the corner, on each corner class and the cornerbacks, right? So we're gonna start today with a slot corner. A slot corner met with the Bills already. Again, that is Carrie Vincent Jr. from LSU. And one thing I like about Carrie Vincent on his tape is that I just noticed that he is a ball hawk. He is always around the ball, and I noticed that watching watching LSU against the better teams, he's just always around the ball. And he is a solid slot corner, and he has a 4.3 speed. He's listed at 5'10", but he came in as pro day at 5'9". So he ran a 4.3 also. So he's fast. But as I'm watching this tape, I'm like, man, this dude is fast, but he's really not like getting a lot of hands on the ball. He's really not playing the catch point the way I like. But I mean, I think honestly he would help a team out. But I'm interested to hear like what you guys think about Carrie Vincent Jr. when you watched him on tape.
Yeah, I liked his versatility. I think that's the first thing, and he talked about that as pro day about being able to do anything on the interior of the defense. He lined up. I liked the way they used their safeties. They disguised a lot of coverage at LSU in 2019, and that's a big thing when what the Bills do is they disguise their coverage with their safeties and their corners, and they make it hard pre-snap on the quarterback. So he comes in with that knowledge and that ability. I would never play him at safety. I would never do that. But I do think he has the ability to help in that aspect. And I think he's an upgrade as far as the ability in the slot to cover over Taron Johnson. So, again, the threshold of what are we looking to do here? I think he's a better coverage player than Taron Johnson. So I think that would be a good pickup. I'm not a huge fan of his route recognition. I think sometimes he gets stuck. He gets a little stuck at the top of the stem of the receiver, and he's late to break. And that, to me, is a bit of a problem, especially in the slot. If you're going to be on two-way goes, if you're not confident and if you don't have the hips to stay with guys, that's going to be the biggest problem. But I think for the most part, he's a good coverage player, and that speed, he has enough to make up when he does get in those situations where he gets a little stuck at the top of routes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying about the kid. I think when you watch his film, you see somebody who is a ball hawk. I mean, you watch the highlight film, you watch his game films. So that right there for me is a big thing. Someone who can go and get the ball, cause turnovers, knock balls out of the air, stop plays from happening. So I like that about the kid. He's got excellent speed, not even just speed that you see in the combine, because we'll get a lot of people who test extremely well and you'll put their tape on, you don't necessarily see it. I think with Vincent, you see his speed, it translates to the field. Yeah. I think he's got that very silkiness to him. He's very smooth, he explodes. I think he's got that athleticism that we're looking for from that cornerback position, especially if you're going to compare him to a Taron Johnson. I think Taron Johnson's reminds me more of an in-box type of, player than necessarily.
He's a good zone player, right?
So he's a
good zone player.
When he's tasked with being able to kind of play in space and be more or less of a linebacker coverage type player than necessarily a coverage player. So I think Vincent would be a better coverage guy, especially in our system. But he is raw. He did opt out of last year, which I think was extremely disappointing because he had a great 2019 and he was putting things together. And you wanted to really see that translate this year, and we didn't get to see it. So there's a little bit of mystery with that. But I think you got a guy, and if you're realistically looking where you're going to draft Vincent, now it almost seems like a reoccurring theme with us. We're always talking about a lot of the guys that we're talking about are that missing, like, well, if we had a fourth round pick, that'd be a perfect landing spot for him.
You want to draft everybody in the fourth round. Like, you only want fourth round picks.
But it seems like, I mean, we have either, especially the way we brand our guys, the guys we choose to talk about, there's that upper echelon, and there's that day 2-3 guy, and I think Vincent is that day 2-3 guy. So do you draft him in the 3rd round? I think that's a little high for a guy of his caliber. But he won't. I don't know necessarily he'll be there in the 5th one on the board. So, but I think that's kind of the area you want to grab a guy like that. I think there's great value in that because I think if you can get him into our system and get him around the guys and train him up, I think it would be great value in a guy with him. Because plus he has that speed and that athleticism, and you can mold that and you could shape that and you can make it effective for our defense. And I think everybody that we're gonna. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the part about him that kind of concerns me is I don't know that he's great downfield. And that is a bit of a problem when you're a 4-3 guy and you've got the speed. Obviously, the size is an issue, and the diverse body types you're going to cover in the slot. He's not going to be a guy that you can just plug in the slot, and no matter who comes in there, he's going to cover that guy. I don't think he's got that skill set. Yeah. So down the field's a problem. And then in the run game, do you guys think he's stout enough to play in the slot? Because that is one thing. That's got to give Taron Johnson. He has been a missile from the slot. Do you guys think that Carrie Vincent Jr. is like that?
See, what I see in
exactly
Vincent,
go ahead.
Vincent is very willing.
Yeah,
he'll stick his head in there and he'll do that. And that's where, I also saw some people say, oh, he's kind of a poor man's Tyrann Mathieu in a sense of that scrappiness. I wouldn't go as far to make that comparison, but he's very willing. And now you could be willing all you want, doesn't mean you're gonna get the job done.
Yeah,
but
of all the poor comparisons, at least this one kind of makes sense because he's athletic enough to be compared to Tyrann Mathieu,
and he's at LSU, so there's a similar jersey at some point. But I think he's willing, but that doesn't mean anything. You could be willing all you want. It comes down to making the play. So he's definitely, if you could somehow mush Taron Johnson and Carrie Vincent into one player, we'd be great. If you could take Taron Johnson's ability to play in the box and run around and tackle and be that physical presence, and Vincent's job to be able to cover and be an athlete, we'd be fine. But it's one or the other.
Yeah, and I agree with both of what you guys said. Like, his biggest knock, I'm looking at right here, is his physicality. But as you said, Greg, and what I saw on tape, is he's willing to stick his nose in there. He will go and tackle, and that's the same thing with Taron Johnson. But like you said, if you could get this guy, like, he's pegged at the 5th round, but I think his coverage ability is way better than a 5th round pick. Like you said, it hampers Buffalo that they don't have a 4th, which is why I'm always pounding the table for them to trade back. So maybe you could get a guy like this who could upgrade you in the slot. But back to TFC's point that he made, like, if you're sticking a Keenan Allen in the slot or a Travis Kelce in the slot, like, I can't see him. I can see teams just picking on him for that, because if you remember in the Miami game, and it wasn't in the slot, but Miami put Mike Gesicki in the outside and just had him kill Levi Wallace like 4 or 5 straight plays in a row. And so I'm saying that point to say they could do that something similar to Carrie Vincent in that regard. Like, if you put a big slot in there, I don't see how you can cover him even with 4-3 speed. So I do like Carrie.
Couldn't cover in the slot either. He struggled himself all season long covering in the slot. So we're kind of in the same boat right now. I don't think he's a massive upgrade. But
so this is the part too about scheme that I think is interesting, because Carrie Vincent Jr. is a man cover corner if you're looking for it in the slot. So there's 2 parts about this that I'm interested in, and this is kind of what I've been doing a little bit of research on, and we might get into this a little bit later, of like, what do the Bills value in a corner and what do they value in a slot corner? They targeted Taron Johnson to be their slot corner when they came in, and he's a very different skill set than Carrie Vincent Jr. Like, this guy is a man cover corner. Taron Johnson's a zone guy. Like, he is much more of a balanced player. I don't see the same balance with this guy. Now, it does upgrade your coverage ability, which I think all of us think they need to do. But do they think they need to do that? And then secondly, you talk about he might not be there in the 4th round. What's the value of a slot corner to the NFL? I think they still undervalue the slot corner, and you might get this guy in the 5th round if you're patient, or I don't know. That's the part I don't know, because it only takes one team to be interested. But what's the value of a guy who is a very specific niche slot corner? We've seen those guys fall down the draft board before.
Yeah, I mean, too, if you break him down in we run a lot of nickel, we run a lot of slot, so. Mm-hmm. Does he stand up to that? You know what I'm saying? So if he was
a rotational player to LSU,
but that's what I'm saying. So if he's going to be a rotational corner, I think for what I like the player and everything, and it wouldn't hurt my feelings to have him in the 5th round. I think there's still a value for him and a place for him on our team. But if you're looking to upgrade Taron Johnson's position and bring somebody in who can cover better while being a presence in the box, Vincent's probably not that guy.
Yeah,
Not to outright
and
replace.
that's
I
the
agree.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It seems like they need a box guy and a cover guy, and Carrie to give you one or the other. But what he does is really good, though. But we can all agree that if the Bills got Carrie, they would definitely get an upgrade to their coverage unit. So that is Carrie Vincent, LSU cornerback, slot god. Now, as we move to my favorite cornerback prospect, Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State. Now, as TFC has mentioned on the show before, Florida State was just awful at pretty much everything last year. And if you watch a lot of his tape, Florida State's defense was awful at a lot of things last year also. So what I saw from Asante Samuel Jr. is this. I think out of all these guys besides Fairley, I think this guy is ready to play right away. And not only play right away, he can play in a slot right away, and he can play on the outside right away. The only knock that I have seen on him is his size. And it's just like, yeah, but not every receiver, especially if you're going against a number two, and not every guy is like 6'5", 6'4". Like, he can play the catch point really well. And now when I play these highlights, I will show you guys, like, he has the instincts in zone. He has the speed in man. He makes so many great speed turns in man, getting down the field to cover these receivers, that I think if the Bills drafted him in the second round, even in that 30, they will get a guy who is ready to play right now. I listened to his interview on 2 for 1 podcast, the PFF podcast, and just listen to him talk about his film breakdown, how he breaks down film, how he watches formations and stuff like that. That's the stuff that you need to translate to the league, and he has that. So, Greg, what did you see from Asante Samuel Jr. that you like?
Well, you kind of went off the deep end there, taking all the good points from everybody. But no, but that's a good thing because, like
That's
I
his
said,
guy.
yeah, and I want to preface a lot of my cornerback talk is that it's definitely not a position of my expertise. I've never coached it, never played it, so it's definitely a harder evaluation for me. But like I said, what I did see from this kid, I think he's an exceptional athlete. I think he's very smooth. What I did notice a lot about him is there's that cockiness that you want, that swagger from a cornerback, and I like that. I don't think even though Trey White plays at a certain level, I don't see that kind of cockiness, and I would like to have that in our secondary. He's very, very quick. He can redirect. I like his hips. He seems to be able to kind of stop, start, and stick with routes. And if you watch his tape, he's involved vertically a lot. And I think that's something that I like about him as a boundary type corner, where I don't think Levi Wallace, he might have the size. He doesn't necessarily have that fluidity and that vertical speed. Asante Samuel has that. And I think, like you said, he seems to be a student of the game. Obviously, he's got the pedigree. His father was a corner, played at a very high level in the NFL for a while. So I think he's learned how to be a student of the game and dissect and read defenses and stuff like that. So I think that's a huge asset to have in a young cornerback who's kind of ahead of the game mentally. So I like the kid. It just comes down to where and when would you grab Asante Samuel. He's pegged kind of a late first round guy. So if you want to take him in the late first round, I think that's a little high for him, but he's not going to be there probably when we go in the second round. So that's going to be one of those things we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place in where and when we would pick a guy, because his value might not be there necessarily when we would have to take him, as opposed to when we could take him. So
in that sense, to me, that's the sort of the TJ Watt position you're in. TJ Watt coming out was not seen as a first round pick. He was seen as a second round pick. He was not the guy that from last year, but he looked like he was going to be a good player. Like you were confident that you were getting a solid football player. I think you can make the same argument about taking Asante Samuel Jr. at 30 because you are confident you're getting a good football player. And EJ, I told you I had a comp for you for Asante Samuel Jr. that wasn't his dad. Are you ready for it? Because it's going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
Tre'Davious White. He looks and plays like Tre'Davious White. So here are the physical comparisons. 5 times, and this is from you can check on this stuff. This was just a quick Google search of Tre'Davious White's combine, but 4.45 for Asante Samuel, a 4.47 for Tre'Davious White in the 40-yard dash. Same problems in the short shuttle, 4.13, which is good, versus a 4.32 for Tre'Davious White. 3-cone, both under 7 seconds, both exceptionally good, under the kind of where you want it in that range, but not exceptional. And then with their height and their weight are almost identical. Tre'Davious White's a little bit heavier. He's a little bit stronger. And they have the same sort of play bigger than they are, but really they're not great athletes. Like, they don't test well. Neither of them do. And you can see Tre'Davious White on the field sometimes, EJ, when you get mad, it's because Tre'Davious White got out athlete despite all the tape study he does. Like, he got a little bit out athleted. And I think you're going to see that with Asante Samuel Jr. is like, he's going to win a lot. But there are times he's just going to lose because he's not 5'11", 201 pounds and runs a 4.31. Like, he's just not the exceptional athlete. And that's the reason I wouldn't take him. You have Tre'Davious White, and he's your best corner, and he's a top whatever corner. But I don't want two. I want a guy with a little more size. I want the guy that's more in the build of Josh Norman. So you have that complement of, if you've got two big receivers, I need a guy who's going to play big and is big. I want length in this draft, and I want size from the second corner. So to me, that's why Asante Samuel, the only reason I wouldn't draft him. Now, I may be passing up a good football player, and that might be the mistake. That's the hill I'm going to die on. But I do kind of want a prototype or somebody with a little more length and size at that second cornerback position. And I think if you look at the guys that they've brought in, that's what they want as well. That's what they're targeting us on the other side from Tre'Davious White.
And see, now that you brought that up, you've kind of
you can't unsee it.
I hate that.
You can't unsee it.
That. But
sorry.
Here's why I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit. Looking at Asante Samuel Jr.'s tape, even though Tre'Davious White led the picks the year prior, I think Asante is way more instinctual than him, meaning that he will take more chances and he will jump more routes. You know, Tre'Davious White sits back there a lot and just I feel like he just kind of lets the game come to him. Asante Samuel will go get it, you know, and the comparison honestly is spot on. But I think Asante has a little bit more dog. As you saw those clips, and like, he's willing to get in the run game. He's willing to get in there and go and stick his nose in there and tackle and stuff like that. So, you know, I can't really go all the way there with you, but I can see exactly where you're coming from. And having a Tre'Davious White, you know, at cornerback 2 wouldn't be a bad thing. Again, Tre'Davious doesn't even play in a slot like that either, though. But Asante can.
It's not a perfect comparison, but I do think that the size and the physical ability, and honestly the way they move around the field is what keyed me off. Is they both, you know, I don't think even their hip flexibility is kind of the same, where it's limited, but they work around it because they got great feet instincts and intelligence. Tre'Davious White, I remember watching him come out, and I remember thinking he can cover anybody he wants to as long as he's locked in on that play. And that's the sort of thing I think you see with Asante Samuel Jr. I do agree that he is a better zone corner. So he is what everyone's looking for. If you're going to play off coverage, you want a guy that's going to drive on the ball and not be wrong. You don't want to get beat deep, and I don't see that from him. He understands what he's seeing, and he's looking at the quarterback, reading that stuff. So, yeah, I think that from that aspect, it's a fit, but you already got that guy.
Yeah. Greg, you got the last word?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of what we're looking at here, and I think that's where some of our viewers and stuff kind of get lost in the shuffle. Is we're not necessarily knocking players; we're just kind of knocking the fit for certain players. You know, obviously we're gonna talk about and evaluate that player, and then evaluate that fit, and then, you know, it's a 3-part thing: the player, the fit, and where and when we would draft them. You know, it's would you feel comfortable drafting Asante Samuel at 30?
Especially if you do target Carrie Vincent Jr. later, and now all your starting corners are under 5'10".
Yeah.
Like, pass.
Yeah.
Pass.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not into
that. I said that during my evaluation. I'm like, you know, we already got a guy that's under 6 foot, and it's just like, do I want another guy on the outside? Even though he can do slot and outside, do I want my second corner being that same exact thing? And I had to come to the realization, like, probably not. You know, I hated to rain on my own parade, but it kind of, you know, is what it is. But we can agree, again, that if the Bills got Asante Samuel Jr., he would definitely upgrade that coverage unit, and he would be an upgrade over Levi Wallace. So here we're going to move to the next corner, our third corner on this list. Now, this is where I want to ask you guys a question after you guys get your opinions in. I want to ask you guys a question. So we're now talking about Syracuse cornerback Ifiyatu Malafawu. I think I got that right. 6'2". Malafawu, man.
Malafawu.
Thought I had that. I was practicing it
Just
too.
call
man. I
him
was practicing
Iffy.
it
That's
too.
all. Iffy.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. He's gonna call him Iffy. Iffy. He has had a pre-draft meeting with the Bills. All these guys we talked about so far have had pre-draft meetings with the Bills already. So the Bills are looking at these guys. So he's 6'2", 205. He ran a 4.4, and he jumped a 42 in the vert, which is in the 98th percentile. So I mean, he had like the second best vert of all the cornerbacks in the draft. Now, here's my quick synopsis of Iffy. I like his physical tools a lot. He is still a very, very raw prospect at the position. And I feel like because he has those tools, those high-level tools that you can't find many corners except for maybe Fairley, like that's the reason he's going to be pegged in the second or third round. But in terms of being instinctive, in terms of making a lot of plays and covers, because if you look at that Clemson game in 19, he was getting beat left and right. And to be so big and to be so tall, he gets knocked around by smaller corners in terms of being boxed out, in terms of not getting his jams off right. And I just don't like to see that from a guy that big. So he is a very raw prospect. But I'll ask you guys a question, when we're done. But TFC, what did you like and dislike about Iffy?
So this is the one thing that I'll disagree, or I'll ask this question about your synopsis. At what point are you just not good, and when are you raw? Because to me, that's the question with a guy that's played a lot of snaps is, I think there are certain parts of his game that are limited. He is, I think, a very good zone cover corner, an off zone corner where he's not going to get beat unless he's out of position. So I don't know that he's a great deep ball coverage guy, because especially if he's in press, he doesn't turn well. So all of those numbers that you gave, the ones that were not good, again, when you're 6'2", 210, you don't have the same hips unless you're Jalen Ramsey. If he did, he'd be a first-round pick. There's a hole in all of these guys. There's a hole in everybody's game that we're going to talk about tonight. Even Caleb Farley, and we'll have a long discussion about that. I think of the guys that are incomplete, he's one of the two that I would target, because I think that his shortcomings you can work around. So I think if the Bills play a lot of off coverage. They don't play a ton of press from what I've seen. And I think if you got him in his zone cover where he's reading and reacting, he's coming downhill, he's hard to throw around, and he is, to a certain point, a very good shadow player. He doesn't do in-breaking routes very well, and he does struggle when he has to turn his hips and run if he's been beat. I don't know that he can recover super well, but as long as he's in phase, he's a condor to throw over. So he'd be one that I would target. And you're right, I would hope that I can get a little more out of him when it comes to the run game, but especially when it comes to the deep coverage, because I think that's a part of his game he can unlock as long as he plays with his feet a little better at the line of scrimmage and his press improves.
Yeah, he's actually, I have in my mock draft, I have us taking him in the second round, which I think is probably a pretty good value for a player like him right there. I know I've seen him some spots. He's popped up in the first round. I think that's a little rich for my blood. But you got a guy. You're looking at a guy who's got great size. As a cornerback, he's a 6'2", 205, something in that range, and he's got the kind of frame and the length where you could add to that. He doesn't have to stay there. He's not maxed out yet by any means. What I did like about him, I think he smothers receivers underneath. He's a very good underneath player.
Yes.
He's very physical underneath against receivers. He's on top of things underneath. So that to me kind of where I felt like not necessarily have this. I guess so. The X factor type player that we're kind of searching for, that we're kind of making a mix with, is this somebody who could be our tight end equalizer, can be that safety hybrid, can be the slot guy, can be a boundary guy. So I think he's got physically the blend that could do a lot of different things, which would increase his value. So he doesn't necessarily have to come in and be a boundary corner, and that's it. So his limitations, we couldn't do other things with him. I think we can bring him in. He could play in a couple different roles and apply it that way. So I like his versatility. What I don't like about him is I think he's got kind of suspect ball skills, where I think he has trouble tracking the ball, finding it, pulling it out of the air, and his tackling, to me, for a guy his size, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself as somebody who I could be a box type of player, but he's a shoot tackler. He dives at ankles. He doesn't wrap up very well. He's just kind of diving in underneath people's ankles a lot of times. And for somebody his size out on the boundary, he should be a lot more physical of a tackler. And just like TFC said, I didn't see a whole lot of his relevance in the vertical game. I didn't see him downfield a lot, tracking balls and being relevant, 20, 30 yards downfield.
So that concerns me, though, that I think he's protected a lot by the sideline. So in this scenario, Tre'Davious White is either your move corner or he's your guy that's playing in space. He's playing against the number one receiver. I'm protecting this guy on the short side of the field, or I'm putting his ass to the sideline and I'm making him cover 8 yards. And I think he can do that really well. You're saying you'd play him in the slot or play him over tight ends. That makes me concerned because then he's got to cover more field. He's got to cover both ways, which he hasn't done before. Like, he's only ever played with his back to the sideline, or he's ever played face up. And I'd rather take Trill Williams and see if that guy works, even though I think he's more physically limited. That would concern me. To put him in the slot, or did I misunderstanding what you mean?
No,
what
I'm saying, I think he has, because of his makeup, his physical ability, his athleticism. I think he doesn't necessarily have to be one thing, and I think you could do different things with him. And I think he's, even though he hasn't done it yet, I think when you're talking about a player who has that size and that kind of mold, and the fact that we don't need to plug him in and play and be a day one guy, that you're able to kind of find where a niche for him is until that role can expand.
Give him the opportunity to try a couple of different places, and then you can feel comfortable knowing that he can play boundary corner, but see what else. I'll give you that. I'll allow the experimentation. Like that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
And that's what and that's basically kind of what I meant. Whether he's going to be, outstanding at any one of those things, I don't know, but I think he has the tools to at least be experimental in a certain couple roles and let it play out. Because, like I said, he's not maxed out size-wise. I think he could add another, few pounds to his frame.
Is he
I
a
think
safety to you?
I say he's got that kind of build, and I think
he does. He
has the range to be out there. And, I think he has the positional versatility where I think there's great value in that. And I said, at worst case scenario, he's your second corner who's limited in a certain aspect, but would be a solid cornerback. And I think he's probably has more potential to be better than Levi Wallace. And I think that's, but you know what I'm saying? I think that's what we're looking at is, are we going to be better with him than Levi Wallace? Yes.
Yes. Here's my question that I wanted to ask both you guys. And I was thinking about it while I was doing tape study. So I'm looking at Asante, right? And I'm looking at Ify. Ify has crazy physical tools. Let's say 2-3 years down the line, maybe he could be a Pro Bowler, right? I see that from him. Like maybe that's one of the top corners in the league. But based on his physical tools, right? He doesn't have the mental ability. He doesn't have the instincts right now to be to contribute day one. That's my thing. Now you look at Asante. Asante has the tools to be a contributor day one, but as you just mentioned, TFC, both of you guys mentioned, he is limited physically as to what he can do, and he's just a carbon copy of Tre'Davious White. So my question to you is, I think we all can agree that the Bills are maybe a great defensive player away from being that Super Bowl contender, right? So the Bills are targeting Ify and Asante. How do I shade between taking one of the two? Asante can help me right away, but Ify can benefit me 2-3 years down the line. So how do I balance that dilemma? That's what I was thinking about.
Where are we drafting them? That would be my first question.
That's all the thing. Like, I'm not drafting Ify in the first round because he can't help me right away. But you will draft Asante in the first round.
I mean, I guess if you looked at it, would you rather draft a cornerback in the first round or a cornerback in the second round? And those would be my two choices. Would I pass on Asante Samuel in the first round to get Ify in the second and go something else in the first round? I probably would go that route because I think if I'm not taking a corner at 30, I'm taking a pass rusher, and I think a pass rusher would be more of an asset now, knowing I could probably get an Ify in the second round. So even though I think Asante Samuel offers me more probably today at 30 than Ify does in the second round, I think what I'm getting more value out of the first round pick being a pass rusher, and then the Ify in the second round. I think that's the best case scenario if I'm Brandon Beane.
In a vacuum, so we're even in your 2-3 years down the line scenario sort of thing. In a vacuum, I'm taking Asante Samuel 9 times out of 10, probably 10, pretty close, because Malafawu gives me a Kevin King, a Kella Witherspoon sort of vibe of a guy that's got all the tools, who doesn't play up to his size and doesn't have the instincts necessarily to capitalize on all of that stuff. Because I think we could all admit, if he did, he would be the clear choice. He'd be the first round pick.
Yeah.
He's played 1,600 snaps in college, so like he's played enough to have a good idea of who he is. I would take him based solely on the situation and knowing what the Bills are looking for in a corner. And when we get to Greg Newsom, I'll give a little bit more of what I mean by that. But I think that schematically he fits. But again, they take guys that aren't great and they make them good corners in this system. And that is what you get out of him. I want a little more length. That's what I'm looking for. And that might be my mistake in this draft of not just taking the right player, which is Asante Samuel Jr., without a doubt. Like there's no comparison. He's the better player.
Yeah, I thought it was a great conversation to sit and think about that. Like, do I want the guy that's going to help me right away, or do I want the guy who probably will benefit me 2-3 years down the line? And the Bills are in a position where they can have that dilemma, but I think either way they go, they'll still be in a good spot. Because they have.
I disagree. I think that they have to get this right. I think that either the corner position or the defensive end position, and I think the edge player is the guy that they need to get right. Because we've seen that they can work with EJ Gaines all the way up to and including other, anybody at that cornerback 2 position. But they need to get this first round pick right. And I'm not gambling any of the first 3 picks on a guy that I don't think is going to be great. And I think I'm talking myself out of this pick because I liked parts of his game watching him. Game watching him. But then there are just parts where I'm like, I don't think this is getting any better. I don't think his deep coverage skills are getting any better. I don't think he's going to be more physical. Of the things that don't improve, physicality is a want to thing. And he should be a brick wall out on the edge. He should be turning everything inside, but he's super passive with receivers. He does that thing of like, no, I've got contain. I've got to be on the outside as he gets pushed down the field. Like, go make a play. And I don't see that from him. And I think I'm talking myself out of this pick because I don't think you can miss on any of these first 3 picks the positions that you need and that are going to be targeted early. They are important positions, and they are positions that they can't miss on.
See, I definitely agree about the cornerback position. See, I think if we're going to draft one in the first 3 rounds, it's got to make it different. Because, like I said, we've all been back and forth. We've left that cornerback 2 position pretty much just. And it's a rotating door, and it seems like it always ends up coming around to Levi Wallace. Like no matter what we throw at it, but we're just throwing crap at it. We haven't made a legitimate purchase on the free agent market, a legitimate upgrade. We haven't put any draft capital into upgrade. So I think if we're going to bring in a cornerback in the first 3 rounds, it's got to be somebody we see as a clear cut. This is the future of that position. Here's my investment. Yep. I'm putting it in here. I'm gonna have a tandem of Trey White and this guy for the next 4 or 5 years, and we're gonna be great there. Not just I got another player and we'll throw him in the mix with Dane Jackson and Trey White. Levi Wallace and some other scrub we find that just got off a bus. Like we got to really put something into this position, and it's a tough call. It's a tough call with all these guys we're talking about tonight, and then even beyond these guys, other guys that are in that kind of consideration in those 3 rounds. And I guess that's the beauty of the draft is that you don't know till you know.
Yeah,
and I'm right there with you. It's a tough call. I would hate to be in this position, but I'm kind of with TFC. Like, I'm going with that dude that's going to, benefit me right away. Like, I like if he's tools, but again, as you mentioned before, Greg, like, it's like he doesn't do enough on tape for me to say, hey, this stuff is going to get any better, especially that physicality. Again, when you're 6'2", 205, and you're going against dudes that's like most of the time the wide receiver across from you is smaller than you, like you shouldn't be getting boxed out and beat all the time in physical aspects of the game. So, if he's a good prospect, but I think we could do better than that.
Would you draft Asante Samuel at 30 if the pass rush situation was overvalued at that position? You know what I'm saying? If we got to the board on 30 and the remaining pass rushers were kind of second round players, would you take Asante Samuel at 30, knowing he's probably not going to be there in the second round?
I've been doing a lot of like a panicked amount of of mock drafts lately.
Two phones out at once, just looking at your computer.
Yeah. So I've got 2 giant screens. I'm running 4,
Yeah.
just vertical columns. I think at that point you're looking at Carlos Basham or the Asai kid from Texas. I'd go the corner. As much as I don't think either of those guys are going to be there at 61, then you're just saying, okay, we're going to get better just because AJ Epinesa is going to make an impact this year. That's you're going to roll with that idea, because you do, that's the whole point of this draft is, so say that happens, you have the latitude to say, okay, I'm going to take Asante Samuel Jr. because we're not bad. Like, the Bills aren't bad at defensive end. They can just be better and make impact plays there and get to the point where I think everyone saw what's happened to teams that have good pass rushes. Like, if you can rush 4, if you're the San Francisco 49ers or if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you can make life a living hell for Patrick Mahomes. That's what everyone wants, but you're still going to win games with this unit. Nothing's on fire. Like, they are good at these positions, except for maybe defensive tackle. But then I would take Asante Samuel Jr. because I don't want to take a guy that I think is just another meh at 30.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't want to keep going down that rabbit hole, but I think that's the scary part. And I'm the same thing with UTFC. I've been breaking down of basically where we're going to end up on this draft, or the most likely scenario of where we're going to end up, and it's going to be almost reaching on a corner or reaching a little bit on a pass rusher if nobody falls.
So they're going to trade up.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's Brandon Beane. They're going to trade up. So say goodbye to one of those 5th-round picks at the very least.
And so as we move from Iffy, a guy with tools but isn't good with his tools, to a guy who has tools and uses his tools, Caleb Fairley from Virginia Tech. Great cornerback. You talk about a guy. They said he's a generational talent, and I didn't believe it at first. But then I actually went and watched his tape, and I was like, I could see where they think that. They said that he has the same kind of recovery speed that Deion has. Now, I wouldn't go that far. But he does have that recovery speed where if he gets beat, he can make that speed turn and still catch up. And now, as we talked about off air, with his back surgery and his back issues, he may be a realistic option for the Bills to take at 30. And it's like, at that point, we're not talking about Asante Samuel Jr. We're not talking about Oweh anymore. We're talking about taking this guy. And TFC, he had a little pushback. He was saying, like, hey, those back issues scare me.
It got ugly, man. I had to put my stuff on mute. Right. It was getting ugly.
He said those back issues scare him. But I am of the belief, as I told TFC very, very professionally, I said, listen, I'm on the glass half full. I'm going to say, listen, let him rehab. Let him get right. Let's sign Casey Hayward. Let him be cornerback too. Have Caleb Fairley in the wings. Have Dane Jackson in the wings. Now you got Caleb Fairley, who could be as good as Jalen Ramsey. You got Trey White, an all-pro corner. You got Dane Jackson, who is a ball hawk. I mean, having that for the next 5 or 6 years at cornerback is just scary for me. And y'all will see these highlights when I play him, when TFC tells you why he doesn't like Caleb Fairley.
Oh, so we're going to wallpaper over my concerns with highlights of Caleb Fairley?
Pay no attention to the man behind these highlights.
That's fair. So first off, I am not a doctor. So all of this comes from just general concern and understanding that back surgery is bad. And I don't care when or how, if you have back surgery, it's not a good thing. So I did a little bit of investigating on what happened and how, and he talked about it openly, that it was a deadlifting injury. So this is my biggest problem about Caleb Fairley is at 18 or 19 years old in a collegiate weightlifting program, which is a professional weightlifting program, he did a deadlift so bad that he ruptured a disc in his lower back. Now that speaks to one of two things: gross incompetence on his part through lifting, or through gross incompetence of the people training him. Or a third option, he's just genetically, structurally not sound in that area. Because I've hurt myself deadlifting. I know that all three of us work out here. That's hard to do, to rupture a disc in your back as a 19 or 18-year-old man. And again, say it again, disclaimer here. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a chiropractor. I don't even play one on the internet. All I know is that's concerning. And then after surgery on it, a year later, not a couple weeks afterwards, not after doing rehab and it didn't get better, he re-injured the second part that he didn't have surgery on. So there were I believe there were two discs that were injured. And it was, I think, the L5 and the S1. So he had a discectomy on the L5. The S1 later became aggravated, and he had to have surgery on that one too. So, and he framed it and he phrased it as, I should have had it done the whole thing the first time, and I should have just fixed it all then. I'm actually happy this happened. No, you should have been happy that you didn't have surgery on your back and that it healed correctly and that you don't have structural weakness in your back, especially in your lower back, where if you're a cornerback, you're jumping in the air, you're falling on your butt all the time. That's a high impact position. So, EJ, is the glass half full or is the glass cracked? Because if the glass can't hold water, it doesn't matter how much water you're pouring into it. It's getting on the counter and on the rug, and I don't have the money to get the security deposit back if I don't get my money back because there's water all over the place. That part went off the rails, but that's just my concern is like, sure, you get a potentially generational talent at 30, or you light that pick on fire and you have a guy on your roster that's taking a spot that might never see the field, or if he does, is on and off with a chronic problem for the rest of his life. And like, without the medical information, and again, not a doctor, without the medical information, a doctor to tell me it's fine, I'm not signing off on that. I'm not, because that's to me, that's the messing up your first round pick, is taking a guy that's never going to play.
Yeah.
The end.
Not now to talk about Caleb Farley. I mean, obviously, it's hard not to talk about him without talking about that. I think 2-3 weeks ago, a month ago, we're not having this conversation about this kid. I don't think he was even in the stratosphere of being on our radar, and now the issues, and we've all seen him, fall down the draft board. So obviously, there's a major concern. They're having the medical combine, was it tomorrow or the next day? So I think we're going to get some questions answered out of that, some clarity here of seeing what's going on. So I think we're all going to kind of be waiting around to see, what the severity is, what the recovery is, and all that stuff. Aside from all the medical stuff, and obviously that's a huge dark cloud, and it's really hampering this kid's draft stock. Obviously, we've seen it plummet, but you're looking at a kid who's got exceptional elite level size, athleticism, speed, ball skills, can do all those things. And we talked about it all night in terms of finding somebody who could be a counterpart to Trey White, who brings a diverse physical makeup and a diverse set of skills aside from him. And I think Farley is that guy. I think, you watch his tape and he's present everywhere. He's around the line of scrimmage. He's coming up, being the force player. I mean, granted, I think he could be a better tackler, but most cornerbacks could be better tacklers. You see a guy who's, tight on receivers. You see a guy who's stride for stride with receivers down the field. You see a guy
he's phenomenal, right? So, there's no question about that. Like, I think he's phenomenal. He's the guy you're looking for sure.
I think you have to really sell yourself on that end of it to swallow the pill almost on the medical stuff. I mean, I said, if they come back tomorrow and say, yeah, this guy is damaged goods and this is bad and he's not going to recover. Okay, now maybe we're talking about him in the third round where you could say, hey, you know what? If this goes better for him, maybe next year we have a guy. But as of right now, projecting him to be somewhat in a broken first round pick,
I think the first year is not the problem to me. I'm not as concerned about the first year. I'm concerned about the fourth year. I'm concerned about the third year. I'm concerned about week 12.
Well, see, he didn't play last year, and we don't even know. That was my concern with the medical thing is he hasn't been football tested.
Yeah,
we've had guys, like I said, people talk about Jaylen Phillips and he's had the concussions. Well, he had concussions, yes, and then that's always a lingering issue. That's a medical concern. He played a 2020 without a hiccup, so that makes you rest a little easier about taking that play.
Exactly.
Caleb Farley hasn't touched a football field prior to this, during this, and yet. So you're not going to see him until you've already paid for him, and that's a scary thing.
The other part of that, and I'll push back, EJ, just quickly, and my comp wasn't Jalen Ramsey, that everybody else has. It's Antonio Cromartie, because I think that he's a little more wild and a little bit less sound in zone coverage than, you see from elite corners. Now that can be fixed. Like all he has to do is then mentally evolve at the corner position, and then he's a complete player. But like right now, if the Bills are a zone cover team, he's good and he'll make up for all his mistakes, but he gambles a lot. Like he's on the edge of his zone quite a bit, chasing receivers, and sometimes he pays for that.
But you know what, too? He's 19.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, he's converted to a cornerback. Wasn't he a quarterback or a receiver or something prior to being a corner? So I think instinctually he's extremely raw at that position. Yeah. And you see the type of caliber player he is pretty much is going off of pure athleticism and just football. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's still a lot of time to kind of cultivate him and let the soup marinate, so to speak. So we might get those things from him. And I don't think there's nothing in his game that makes me say, geez, I think he's a diamond that could just be polished to look prettier outside of the glaring back injury could be career threatening. But
you're kind of looking. You don't know if there's a fault line in the diamond, or if you need to have cataract surgery. Right?
What's going on here with that? It looks a little cloudy in there, but I might just need to get polished. But but that's the topic, man. Getting him at 30 would be wow. That's going to be a hard pill right there.
Yeah, to answer your question, Greg, he played offense in high school. Yeah, so he was.
I know I read that somewhere. So you got a raw. He's extremely raw, and look at the level he's played at that. So I think the ceiling is extremely high for him. And one of the other things I wanted to say about his game that really stuck out to me, in comparison to, he is a hell of a red zone cornerback. Yeah. You see him in the end zone. He is just so relevant. He is on top of receive. And to me, that's a trait that I admit off the top of the show, cornerback is not my strong suit. Evaluating corners is not my strong suit. But seeing that there, it takes a certain level of confidence to be on an island in the end zone. And he played that extremely well. And to me, I fell in love with that. Looking at that, translating to what the Buffalo Bills secondary is kind of lacking, especially when you're looking at I keep saying Trey White, looking at Levi Wallace and replacing him with a Caleb Farley. Wow, wow.
And I'm going to rebut on TFC's points. Number one, as I mentioned to you off air, TFC, how many times has Jeremy told us that the Buffalo Bills have the greatest medical staff in the NFL? How many times has he said that? He said that ad nauseum. So I'm gonna take him at his word and say, hey, the Buffalo Bills, are gonna take care of him if they were to take him at 30. And as Greg have said, when you watch his tape, you will fall in love. There is not anything he cannot do at cornerback position. If you want a corner that can do everything, between him and Surtain, they can do everything. He can stick with fast corners. Fast receivers. He can stick with big receivers. And like you said, Greg, he can do his thing in the red zone. When you got the DeAndre Hopkins, when you got all these guys that you have to play, the Bills have to play the Bucs this year. All these great wide receiving core. He will immediately upgrade that cornerback 2 spot. He might be even a cornerback 1 if he reaches his full potential. You know what I mean? Because he has those high-end traits that Trey White just doesn't have. He's a great corner, but he don't have those high-end traits. So to Greg's point, that is what I'm falling in love with. And for the Bills as a team, and in a macro perspective, they can take somebody like him and let's say, hey, hell, he don't pan out or he don't play or his back is as bad as you saying it is, TFC. It's still straight. They still will be straight if he do not contribute at cornerback 2 or 3 years down the line. They'll still be good. You know what I mean? And then they can take Trill Williams late, or they can take somebody else who's a pretty decent corner and be eyes. Why not take a chance? That's what the draft is about. It's about value, and he will provide the most value at pick 30 if you take him. And if you don't pan out, cool. But if you do pan out, look out for the Bills.
Well, that's the thing. There's no in between. So there's no in between, because if the back is fine, then he's going before the Bills pick. And if the back isn't fine, then he's going to be there at 30. And if the Bills medical staff is as good as Jeremy says, and I think they've done a great job, I'm not saying they're not, but they might pull him off the draft board because of that. And there's your answer. That's what I'm saying is don't overlook this, because you can look at the tape and you can fall in love with all of those things. But again, you're falling in love with something that might not exist. I'm just pointing out the reality of his back might not be okay, and it might not hold up. Todd Gurley had similar issues. He had a chronic arthritic knee, and he made it to his second contract because they gave him a second contract early. But that's the only reason he made it to his second contract. That is the reality of what we don't know about this particular situation. So if you're going to go into this guns blazing and being like, yeah, give me the upside, I'm telling you, like, if he's there, the back isn't okay. And then you are taking a player who might not play over players that will play. And you want to talk about value and hit rate, and you want to talk about all those things. How about a guy that's on the field? How about a guy that actually rushes the passer? Like, I want somebody on my team that's going to play. And like, I don't know. And anybody can get injured. But I have the evidence that he has an injury that didn't even happen on the field. This was a weightlifting injury.
So TFC, say, using the Todd Gurley example. Now, Todd Gurley gave the Rams, 3 elite years, was it?
Sure. Yeah.
4. Give us 4.
Okay, we'll just say 3. Say 3 elite years.
3, and then 1 was with the system.
Now, would you draft Fairley on the same timetable of getting 3 elite cornerback years with this current team, and then knowing there's going to be a massive decline in year 5-ish?
Are we
in the first round?
So then? Okay, no, because then after 3 years, you're let's say 3 years are great, 1 year is bad, and then you give him the 5th year option, you give him the extension. Then you're locked into a guy. Then you're in the same situation as the Rams, where you've got a player that is not the same player and will not be the same player, but you're paying him like he is. So,
I'm not saying about that the second contract. I'm just saying, just basically, would you draft this guy knowing you were going to get, take away the second contract and re-upping on him following the Gurley thing? What I'm saying is, knowing that you're going to get only 3 years of elite production from Fairley, and then there's going to be a massive drop-off whether you walk away from him and that's it, would you still draft him at 30, or would you think that's just too short-sighted and there's not enough longevity in that, regardless of 3 elite years that could help potentially win you a Super Bowl in those 3 years?
Potentially win you a Super Bowl like that. Okay, so that's, again, saying that everything goes right. That's saying that everything hits right the same exact way, that your offense is still as good, everyone's still healthy. Like, yes, this is the Bills' Super Bowl window. There's no question about that. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would, considering that I could get 4 or 5 good years. I could get 6 or 7 from a different player playing at a very good level.
Are they, as to Greg's point, though, are they elite years, though? Are they elite? Is those 6 or 7 years? Are any of those years elite?
So William Jackson had an elite year his rookie year. He hasn't done jack shit since then. So are you telling me that, like, I get to pick the year and the Bills get to win the Super Bowl because I decide what year it hits? Because then, sure, like, if I can cherry pick all this stuff and I can make sure that he's healthy then sure. Like, if I could ensure the Bills win a Super Bowl, yes, but I don't think this provides the level of I don't think you have the bandwidth here, in this scenario that you're presenting me with, that I get a window of 3 years is what you're saying. I get a window of 3 years. Like, the idea of team building is to build a window that doesn't... Not just 3
years, 3 elite years. Not just 3 years, 3 elite years.
His years are 3 elite years. But again, if we're going to break this all down into individual people, and he has 3 elite years, but Josh Allen doesn't have an elite year that year, or somebody gets injured on the defense and the whole thing falls apart, then no, it doesn't matter if he had an elite year individually. If the team isn't any good, and then 2 years later he's gone, I don't think that's the value of a first-round pick.
And you've completely ruined my scenario here at TFC.
Sorry, because
he has a way of doing that. He has a way of doing that, man. That's why I like Asante. He has a way of doing that.
You brought all these other things into it. I was just asking for 3 years, elite, third at the 30th pick.
Yes, I want to win the Super Bowl, but like, a part of it also is making sure that window is open long enough that all the random variables in life hit at the exact same time and it all works out. And that, to me, is what this is about, as much as it is about getting value or getting elite years, but like making sure your window is open as long as possible. Because look at the Kansas City Chiefs. Look at the Kansas City frickin' Chiefs. They have 1 Super Bowl in what should have been 3. because that's how it works. The Buffalo Bills, in their Super Bowl window, went to the AFC Championship game the first year. What's going to be next year and the year after that? You cannot guarantee that they're going to be there every year because that's not the NFL. So if you're telling me I get 3 years from a guy and it's I don't know, that to me, maybe I'm risk averse. Maybe I don't gamble enough. Like I've been to the casino once. I lost $70 and I was like, well, this sucks. Like right. I want Asante Samuel Jr. more than I want that because I know I'm going to get a decade of good football, and at some point in there, it's all going to hit right.
This is a great fiery conversation. I love it. Scott Reed, Cody Wells, we see all you guys. Appreciate you guys showing love, to the stream. This is a heated debate, and this is what we live for. This is what I live for. I love these type of debates. TFC's my guy. He will always rebut me, and I love it. Always.
You drag me into your end of hot takes, man.
Well, see, I didn't even make a stance.
Good. This is actually a great conversation. I do love this.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't even take a stance though. I didn't even say I would or wouldn't.
Well, what is your stance then? Wait, what is your stance?
If I can get 3 elite years from him with the roster that we currently have. And the board, there was nothing glaring better than him on the board at that point, and for me, that's a pass rusher. I would take him if I knew I was going to get 3 elite years out of him because I think he could make our defense that much better. And obviously, anything could happen. Yeah, Josh Allen can, get the flu for fucking 2 months. Excuse my language.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? Like anything could happen. All these variables can happen. We all understand that. But all things level. If I can get 3 elite years out of Fairley to the level that we think he can play on this defense as it is, I think we would then have that team. And I think if we're looking at who we have to get into the Super Bowl, it's got to be Kansas City. And do we have the secondary firepower? Last year it got exposed extremely, extremely bad. So I think that would put us on that path to a Super Bowl. But then we still need some pass rushers.
Yeah.
Right. Last word to the sports bully, man, because we're going to be on this for because we got to get to our last prospect of the night, and that is Northwestern cornerback Greg Newsom, who played, I think he played 2 years of college, if I'm not mistaken. They say is that he's got better from year 1 to year 2. So in 2020, he looked like a totally different corner. They didn't play all their games, obviously, because of COVID. I'll tell you this. When I was watching his tape, I thought he played the catch point extremely well. I thought he was pretty fast. He isn't as instinctual as everyone says he is. And I can tell, like, when you're not making breaks and when you're not getting to the ball before the wide receivers, like, I need to see that at least, like, once or twice for me to be like, oh, this dude's instinctual. Like, Asante does that. Like, Greg Newsom, like, he doesn't do that for me. He doesn't have that closing speed. But he is a really good corner. He has pretty decent arms, pretty decent hips. I mean, he's an all-around good corner. And if you took him, they're pegging him right now in the first round. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say he's the first round. I'd go like second round. I'd be comfortable taking him in the second round. I would not take him over Asante. I would not take him over Fairley, but I would take him over Ify. So I go there. But I'm interested to hear what you guys saw from Greg Newsom that you like. Greg, what did you like about the other Greg?
I think I think you hit it there. I think you just have a very, very solid, safe, clean prospect. Obviously, there's some deficiencies in the game, but he's got 6'1", 190 pounds, so he's got good size. He's got good length. I know. I think he had his combine. I think he tested very well. I didn't necessarily see the that what even a 4.340 was that what it was?
Yeah, his short shuttle wasn't good though. So his other testing drills weren't good, but he ran fast in a straight line.
Well, I don't think the cornerback position is a straight line anyway. So I didn't necessarily see his speed on the field, but he's extremely competitive. I think he's rarely out of place. I think he's a smart football player. Somebody that I think, I said we have that debate. He's probably taking him at 30 might be a little rich, but he's not going to be there in the second round. So you have to make that call. And I think that's somebody there, if all things are, as we've talked about tonight, if that pass rusher for me isn't there and he's there, then I think that's a smart move. It's a solid move. I think he's instantly better player than Levi Wallace. I think he offers us, more things from that position. But the couple of things that did stick out to me is his ball skill production. I think he's got one career interception So that stuck out to me as kind of, if you're that type of cornerback, and granted, if you're the top corner, you're not getting thrown on all that much, and he wasn't on the field much. I was at a shortened season. I think he missed a couple games prior to that.
And he didn't play in the Big Ten championship game outside of, I don't think, of the first quarter. So he didn't go up against Fields and Wilson.
Yeah, he played.
He hurt himself.
Yeah, he played 17 snaps.
The thing is that durability, though it's not on the level of Fairley, he does have some of these nagging little durability issues where he's missed some time. So that's another thing for me. He's had some nagging injuries and he didn't play a ton of football. So like everybody we're talking about tonight, there's no perfect prospect on this list. But for 30, if he was there and other guys weren't, I could see value in taking him. I think I think it's a solid move. I don't think anybody's going to be blown away by that, or it's not going to be a stand up at the bar and clap and chug a beer because you got the guy you wanted. But I think it's a safe bet at 30 if other factors are in play.
So
I
here's the other question.
Go ahead.
Here's a hot question. TFC, would you take Newsom or would you take Asante at 30? At 30, not in the second round. At 30. Yeah, see, it's tough, man.
Well, you've already said you wanted physical diversity.
Yeah, so I think it would be Newsom. Yeah, that's where I was going to land, because I think I liked him more than I expected I would, and I liked him because he's really smart. When you see on his tape, his first step in the ground, like maybe it's a little mechanical, but he's thinking on every play. He's engaged on every play. For a guy that is as tall as he is, he's got good pad level. Like he's always in a football position. I get a little sick of watching some of these guys stand around watching other people play football. Greg Newsom's playing football at all times when he's on the football field. So shocker, I like that. My biggest problem is at the top of the stem of the route, when he doesn't know what to do, he gets stuck. When he doesn't see it, when he doesn't know what's coming, sometimes he turns into a bug on a windshield. He, I think, had 11 penalties over the last 2 years, and that's with a COVID season in the Big Ten. So, imagine if he had a full season this year, that's a lot of penalties. The ball production is one thing, and he's not explosive. Like he has some of the sluggish. His transitions are so slow, but he's smart about how he plays football, so he can get his hips in position, so he doesn't have to do that quick flip of the hips, and he can track balls. And this is again when it comes down to what the Bills are looking for. So the Bills play more cover 4 than about any team in the NFL over the last couple of years. They're constantly moving their safeties around, whether or not they have 2 deep or 1 deep. And because of the skill set of the 2 safeties, you don't know which one's going to be in the box. You don't know which way they're rotating, but you do know that they're going to have their 2 corners probably in zone coverage in some form or fashion. And I think you look at the teams in college that do that. That's why you got so many kids from Iowa coming through. That's why you got so many kids from Pitt coming through. Those are the teams, Michigan State, all off the same tree from a defensive family. Those are the guys that I'm looking for, and Greg Newsom fits that mold of a cover 4 safety who's smart in zone coverage. He's not going to trigger well downhill like Asante Samuel Jr. He's not going to break up as many passes, but he's not going to get beat deep, and I think he can make plays on the ball with his intelligence and his straight line speed. So he's going to deter more people from throwing his way than he is going to make plays on the ball. 30 is a bit rich, but I would probably do that. That's probably what I would do because he has the other things that I'm looking for. And I just think if you're rolling with 2 guys that are 5'9", listen, I'm 5'9". I'm all about short dudes. Like, I stand up for the short dudes, but at a certain point, DK Metcalf is 6'5", and you need to deal with that.
Right. Yeah. I agree 100%, man. And honestly, another knock that was on Greg Newsom was the fact that he hasn't played any top-notch wide receivers other than that Ohio State game. And if you look at Asante Samuel, all the clips I put in there, I put against Florida, and I did that on purpose because in that Florida game, who was on the other side? Tyree Cleveland's in the league. Grimes, Kyle Pitts. Like, he was covering NFL talent in that game, and I think that is a legitimate knock when you haven't played some of the guys that's going to be in the league, and so when you gotta, like, in our division, you got Devontae Parker, 2 times a year. You got who knows who the Jets are gonna get? Corey Davis. I don't think he's a great wide receiver, but he's all right.
He's
you know what I mean?
got some good size, and he was
Yeah.
I don't like any of this.
He's an all right receiver.
I don't like any of these things that you're making me do today. I don't like any of it. But like, if I had to choose, I guess I'm choosing that. But I could easily be happy with Asante Samuel Jr. too. Just as long as everyone else is gigantic, like, can we just get some more size somewhere? Then if there are giant people on the field that, well, shouldn't say that because the linebacker in the middle is 6'5", and that doesn't matter.
Yeah. But right. To answer one of the questions I saw pop up there.
I was just about to say that, Greg. Yeah, answer his question.
Jaylen Phillips all day, every day. I am absolutely in love with that kid. The more I watch, the more I like. And there's not a ton to watch, but he is the best pure pass rusher in this draft, hands down. It's not even close. He's got great length. He's got great get off. He's got such a developed set of pass rush moves. I think he would instantly upgrade our pass rush, and he's
mean with his hands too. I love the way he just
so much
throws
bend.
people.
He's so flexible. He's able to just plant and burst off that, and he would be an absolute, I think, a nightmare. He's going to be a nightmare in the NFL for somebody. I hope and pray that he ends up in Buffalo. I think that would be absolutely the best case scenario for us. It would put all this what if corner talk to bed if he's there. Right. And you got to take the kid. I think he's. But go ahead.
That's another thing too, and I've been debating this like all off season, and I've been listening, and I've been trying to like I do believe that, like, if you improve your pass rush, now there is a upper limit. I think that teams think that if you just continue to get as many good pass rushers as possible, your secondary doesn't matter. But if you were to improve the pass rush of the Bills to consistently get those sacks that you're looking for, Greg, I think you can the improvement you'll see in the secondary, you'll see. And you don't need a Caleb Farley back there just because of the scheme and the system that they play. If they can get home with 4, they can do a lot of things with less in the secondary. And we saw that in 2017 and 18 where the Bills were good in the secondary. And I think it's because Kyle Williams was still there and they were still getting enough pressure on the quarterback that it made the whole engine run. And without that right now, Ed Oliver hasn't turned the corner. You need somebody up there. That's where I'm investing my money. In the end, that's where I'm investing my money because I think you have enough pieces in the back that you can limp along with a cornerback too that isn't the best in football if you have the rest of the defense playing together and playing well.
I think it's a domino effect, and it starts up front, offense and defense. Everything starts up front. If you could have a pass rusher who could, help cause havoc in the backfield, create disruption, have quarterbacks throwing off target, moving in the pocket, throwing before they want to, making errant throws, it's going to naturally make your secondary better and more opportunistic. And I think Jaylen Phillips is in that realm of possibilities for us, and I think that would be an absolute perfect fit for us, and that would be best case scenario. I wouldn't even care what the next 6 picks were. I would be just so happy with that.
Scott was doing well all night, and then he brought up Star. He was on point with a lot of his comments.
Scott, bro. I was just about to say that, like, Scott, bro. He not Star, bro. Like, no.
What was that? I missed the tweet. What did he say?
I want to go back to Thomas. Oh, I just want to say Thomas Cook, bro. Did you not miss our 30-minute talk about Caleb Farley, bro? We was on him for mad long, bro. Come on, that's why you got to get into our streams early, bro. Come on. But Scott was saying that Star Lotulelei will make our linebackers and DBs better. Nah.
See, I disagree. I think he will. I think having Star Lotulelei back in the middle because, well, here, now back up a second. Now, in 2019, Edmonds played better. And I'm no fan of Edmonds, but I think he played better. I think you have Star Lotulelei, when he was playing his better football, you had a guy, Jordan Phillips, ate off of him, next to him. And I think you have somebody who's able to at least eat the line of scrimmage. And Ed Oliver, if you look back at Ed Oliver's rookie season, once he started, it had nothing to do with who was next to him. He didn't get it. It took Ed Oliver some time to kind of understand the speed of the NFL for him because he was raw. And he still is to a certain extent. But Ed Oliver came on towards the end of his rookie year, and we started seeing flashes of what we got in Ed Oliver. And I think a lot of that had to do with Starlu Tulele's impact of just kind of being around the line of scrimmage, being able to eat some blocks, keep some players clean. He's not going to break the pocket. He's not going to disrupt anything in the backfield, but he's able to kind of control. I think that's something we didn't have last year at all. And I think having that presence is going to help us. I don't think it's going to be the miracle we've all been waiting for to make the lights go on for Edmonds and Oliver and Epinesa, and everyone's just going to eat because he's back. I think it's a step in the right direction. And if we can get him to do that job, we're okay, because we didn't have that last year. So I think him back, it's a good thing.
What you're describing is a rank average one tech. So that's the difference. Is I think a lot of people are saying getting back to average makes us great. And Starr himself being an average defensive tackle playing the one tech position doesn't make him above average. It makes him average. Now, that's what you're missing. You're not getting positive play, but there is a value to just not being bad and letting your other players around you play better. And I've kind of walked back from the he's useless point to just being like he has a use. And what you described is his use. It's just not worth $10 million, but that's
no.
Not here or there. Like that literally doesn't matter. That's locked in. So let's at least get average play from the one tech.
And that's my point all day long, is that if we can go back in time, I would never have touched this guy with a 50-foot pole. But for the fact that he's under contract, we have no other choice, and that there's nobody else on the roster yet that does what he does. I know a lot of people like Zimmer and Phillips. I just don't think that they do the things that he's able to do with his size and his strength. I think they're more kind of a quick-hitting, one-technique, three-technique type guys. I don't think they're the presence physically that
eventually that's what they need.
Well,
eventually that is what they need. But
they need a Starlu Tulele. They need a real Starlu Tulele, what they wanted. They need a one-technique who could eat the middle and provide some sort of between the B gaps presence in the run game and push the pocket from the middle of the field. That's not Starlu Tulele, but that's what we need.
Yeah.
Bringing Christian Barrymore. No, I'm not taking Christian Barrymore over one of these corners. And when you can get somebody like Milton Williams or Marvin Wilson later in the draft, that would be way better value. Now, this was a great debate tonight, y'all. I really love this. I really like talking this. Y'all know corners was one of my favorite positions on the field, and I think we did a good job tonight. Thank you for all the fan interaction today. Scott Reed, Cody Wells, you guys been on all night. Appreciate you guys. Comments. Lone Wolf, appreciate everyone who tuned into this stream tonight. Guys, what are we talking about? What position are we talking about next Thursday? Draft is slowly approaching. We got 3 more weeks.
We don't have much. I think we got linebacker and we have safety left on the board. And what hurts my feelings is that linebacker was the first position that I really got into this offseason, and we never talked about, because all I was thinking was, got to replace Milano. And now it's kind of like, like that's all gone now. So, but I put so much work into it. We got to go back and revisit it, but it's going to stink because a lot of the guys we're going to talk about, it's going to kind of not be as relevant as it would have been, a month or two
possibly
ago.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a factor, but not as, it wasn't going to be at pick 30, the Milano replacement, which I think we all thought was going to happen.
Hey, Derek Mance, you're lucky for you. We have a Penn State aficionado here. So TFC, here's your question, bro.
Derek, I see what you see, honestly. So this is the thing. Shaka Toney's improved more than any player that I've watched here at Penn State, from the beginning to the end. But that doesn't mean at the end he's what you're looking for at the defensive end position. So that's, in the end, I don't think he's big enough to play in this system. I think he's a good player. I think he's going to carve out a role on a defense somewhere, but I don't think he's an off-the-ball linebacker. I haven't seen enough evidence that he can move in space that way. So I think he might be more of a situational 3-4 outside linebacker, spot drop in coverage, because he can do that. But he's not, that's not his skill set. His skill set is getting to the quarterback, and I think he's stronger than people give him credit for. So that's the thing. But he's on the edge of being able to hold up at the end line in the NFL. And this is the thing. And this is the part, Derek, where he's been 238 to 250 over the last 8 months. So what is Shaka Toney's weight? Because if it's 238, that's absolutely no. If it's 249, maybe. But like again, like day 3, sure, yeah, bring in anybody on day 3. I think he's a proven pass rusher. If you're telling me in the 6th round you can get a Shaka Toney and be a situational or rotational pass rusher, yeah. But again, I'm not going after that guy. I think that is for another team there's more value, but for the Bills it's marginal really, and they like big thick defensive ends. They don't like speed guys. I think Yannick Ngakoue isn't a Buffalo Bill. It's been 2 years that everyone wants him to be a Buffalo Bill, and he's the kind of the same dude. They're not going to go after that guy.
Greg, you want the last word on that?
I mean, it's hard to, I agree with everything. I think Shaka Toney has a place in the NFL where he falls. I think he's a day 3 pick, and what he offers would be, based on his situation and who takes him. If he ended up Buffalo grabbing him, in the 5th, 6th round, I see value there. And if he's been 250 pounds, obviously he's capable of getting back there again to some extent. Well, I'm saying, to some extent.
But I think that was one of those height weight things you get in college where everyone is 2 inches taller and 10 pounds heavier. I don't think he was ever 250. That's the thing is, that's a listed weight, but I think he plays closer to 240 than he does 250. And I know we're splitting hairs. Like that's a good dump on some days for some people, but like it matters in the NFL to be 250 and play defensive end versus if you're closer to 240, I need him creeping up, not down. And I can't get a good gauge on how much he actually weighs.
Yeah. But I mean, weight aside, I think his skill set, he is a good pass rusher. He's got a good athletic ability there, and I think he's got some good pass rush skills. So as a developmental pass rusher in the 5th round, it wouldn't be a terrible move, but is that what we really need right now? Probably not. But if he's there and the board is thinned out, and we've already addressed some other things, it wouldn't be a bad developmental move in the 5th, 6th round. And to answer the question I saw quick, no, Dylan Moses is not a middle linebacker at all, and he would not make a good middle linebacker replacement for Tremaine Edmonds.
Hey, tell that guy to come back next week when we talk about linebackers, and we'll get more deeply that. So again, I want to appreciate everyone. We still got almost 20 viewers in here. Appreciate everyone who's watched the live stream today. It was a good spirited debate talking about one of my favorite positions, cornerback. And again, tune in next week as we discuss the linebacker positions. Don't know which ones we'll be discussing, but obviously we'll discuss ones that the Bills are looking at. And keep coming with your questions, and keep supporting us. And we appreciate all you guys. And tune in next week at 9 as we talk about the linebacker prospects for the Bills.